Ever since Grand Admiral Thrawn was introduced in Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn, everybody has been wanting to see this character live action, wanting to see the character part of the canonical universe, you know, on screen, on film, somewhere. We finally got that. Well, originally we got it in Rebels, but it was a very toned down version of the character. I think a lot of people were counting on Thrawn showing up in Ahsoka and really blowing people's minds away. And, you know, it's just kind of disappointing. It felt like Dave Filoni really treated Thrawn dirty in this one. He did not give the character the gravitas, the strategic excellence that he deserved. And it just felt like an enormous letdown. And I thought maybe it was just Aaron and myself that felt this way. It turns out it was not. There's recently an article on, I think it's Giant Freaking Robot, talking about how Star Wars might have actually killed Thrawn, you know, not literally, but figuratively, with the show Ahsoka. And we did not get to talk about Thrawn and just how bad he was, his portrayal was in the Ahsoka show when we actually reviewed the entire season. So let's give it a little more TLC because Thrawn deserves it because he's an amazing character. Getting to see Grand Admiral Thrawn in live action on Ahsoka was a real treat for Star Wars fans, especially those of us with dog-eared copies of Heir to the Empire that we've been flipping through since 1991. Sure, it was cool enough to see the character brought to life in Star Wars Rebels, but old school fans of the Star Wars EU have waited decades to see live action Thrawn. That's a shame because Thrawn we see on Disney Plus bears so little resemblance to the character in the book that it seems Disney has ruined Thrawn possibly forever. And that is a bold statement, but something I can absolutely understand. If you have never actually seen Thrawn until Rebels and then continued into Ahsoka, you will not have a true understanding or appreciation of the amazing character that Thrawn is. I remember the book from Timothy Zahn. I remember the comic book adaptation from Mike Barron, which is absolutely fantastic. Hell, I even read the Jody Hauser adaptation of the updated Thrawn series from Timothy Zahn after Disney acquired Lucasfilm and decided we needed a new origin for the character to fit their new canon. And Thrawn was always just kind of badass. He was awesome. He had that thing, that je ne sais quoi, to actually stand up to a Sith leader, to stand up to the Emperor himself, and really be this enormous threat, not only to the Jedi that were left, in this case being Luke Skywalker, but really to the entire New Republic that had been formed. Grand Admiral Thrawn is the thing that's standing between them and actually full victory. And if you watch the Ahsoka show, you do not get that. Sure, they do talk about him like he's a really big deal and like, oh my goodness, maybe we should leave him at the other side of the galaxy, but then they decided to go enable that plan and allow him to come back. But once you actually see him in action, the thing that goes through your head is, man, this kind of feels like a moron. And that's where Dave Filoni and the people behind Ahsoka really dropped the ball with Thrawn, in my opinion. In the original Timothy Zahn Star Wars books, Thrawn was able to hold his own against powerful Jedi like Luke Skywalker, and he essentially bent an evil dark Jedi clone to his will, temporarily at least. Now, with the full resources of a Star Destroyer, along with the mystical abilities of the Night Sisters, and almost nothing else to do, the Thrawn in Ahsoka can't hunt and kill a single pesky Padawan. Ahsoka gives us a Thrawn that, after at least a decade, is seemingly unable to understand the Noti or the alien bandits on the planet well enough to help hunt him and kill Ezra Bridger. And that is the big mystery box that is Ahsoka. That's where the map leads you. It actually leads you to where Grand Admiral Thrawn is and where presumably Ezra Bridger is as well, because they got taken away by the space whales, whatever you want to call them. Is it the Purgle? Something really stupid like that. Dave Filoni cannot do Star Wars names quite like George Lucas, but who can really? So they're out there and they've got to get to him. And yes, Thrawn has had a decade to track down Ezra Bridger on this planet where apparently he's the only one there with these mystical witches and everything, and an entire, I don't know, division of freaking stormtroopers at his disposal. And he apparently never even gets close. And it's not like Ezra Bridger's on the other side of the planet or has discovered caverns that lead to the middle of the planet where he wasn't on the surface or anything. He's just out there with a band of traveling turtle people that are like, I don't know, a couple of kilometers away from Thrawn himself. It doesn't look like he ever even had a plan to go find Ezra Bridger, who you would think he wanted to destroy because he understands just how powerful the Jedi are and just how dangerous a threat they are to him and the entire Empire, which at that point he probably doesn't even know has been destroyed. He probably wants to get back and join back up with the Empire. He doesn't realize they've actually been defeated at this point. And it does make him look pretty stupid because he's not exactly hiding. He's the only human in the group. They don't have weapons. They have no means of actually fighting any of these trained soldiers that Thrawn has at his disposal. And he's supposed to be like the super genius. As soon as he sees the art and the culture of an alien planet and civilization, he completely understands what makes them tick. He understands how they operate. He understands how they think. In fact, he even understands how they would operate militarily because he's operating on such a higher level than everybody else. And I guess Dave Filoni never considered that just having this threat sit there, not fully trained, not really dangerous, not with anybody that could help him defend himself, just sit there for a decade straight, and Thrawn never coming close to actually capturing him might actually make him look stupid and go against everything that actually defines the character as who he is and why he's this enormous threat to everybody, to peace everywhere, because he is the one guy left that really can take down the New Republic, but he can't catch Ezra Bridger and a bunch of nomadic people that live in shells. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Thrawn is portrayed as almost dangerously incompetent, even if we only judge him by his appearance in the Star Wars special. In the final episode of Ahsoka, Thrawn seems very honest about why nobody should underestimate the Jedi, telling Morgan Elsbeth, "Even I fell victim to the heroics of a single Jedi." When he said this, we couldn't help but think about how stupid it was that he let Sabine go and even gave her lightsaber back. At some point, we need to admit that the Jedi might not be winning due to heroics so much as Thrawn's stupidity. That was a moment, like a part of his plan. I kind of got it at first. I was like, oh, he doesn't know where Ezra is. He probably thinks that Sabine is force sensitive, which we know she isn't. And force sensitive beings can actually sense other force sensitive beings. She would actually be able to find Ezra if he really was, hidden and concealing himself and very hard to find. If she was actually force sensitive, which she isn't until like the last couple minutes, I guess, of that episode. So that kind of makes sense, but giving her lightsaber, pretty stupid, not monitoring her, and just sending a couple of random ex-Jedis after her. And he's just like, yeah, well, they'll come back when she finds him, even though we're going to like abandon them here on the planet. Like, why didn't, as soon as he let her go, they had everything, literally everything that they ever needed. They just needed to finish packing up the starter story. He should have just taken off and been like, well, great. Now the only Jedi that I know that are left are stuck here on this stupid planet, and they'll never be able to get back because there's nothing left here. That's why I was stranded for 10 years on the other side of multiple galaxies, I believe. I believe that's what's actually implied here. But for him to like, yeah, here's your lightsaber, go find Ezra, and then we'll take him back, and never having a plan to actually thwart her is actually dumber than even the moment when Sabine finds Ezra and it's no big deal. They're like, hey, what you doing? Not much. Took you long enough. Cool. I missed you. I missed you too. No hugs, no excitement, none of that. They're just like, glad you finally made it. And that was a pretty big letdown. But seeing Thrawn portrayed as just so utterly incompetent and stupid is also a major letdown. Like, I could almost see where the plan was going, but he would just come up with these contingencies on the fly and just lose the whole time and say, yes, I planned for this. It was like, why do you keep planning to lose? Shouldn't you be planning to win at some point? Like, you keep making the same mistakes over and over again and making yourself look dumber and dumber. Why don't you all just leave, since everybody on the planet's going to be stuck, including these two Padawans that you're aware that actually exist now? Like, it would probably be a good idea to just go now. Yet he just sits there for hours upon end, waiting for them to find a way to get back onto the ship. Like, absolute stupidity. Like, why did he give her the lightsaber back? He didn't realize that she was untrained and didn't know what the hell she was doing. It was probably a bigger danger to herself with that lightsaber than an actual Sith or basically anybody trained. He didn't know that at that point, but he gave it to her anyway. Absolute stupidity. The last thing they talk about, another very consistent feature of Grand Admiral Thrawn in the original books, as well as Rebels, is that he is a master strategist. He's always thinking 8 moves ahead, and whatever moves the good guys have planned, Thrawn already has several counter moves locked and loaded. When it came to dealing with Jedi opponents in Ahsoka, however, Thrawn's entire plan seemed to rely on the newest Dark Jedi, Baylan Skoll, and Shin Hati. It's bad enough that Thrawn didn't seem to have any real contingency plan for the warriors that he would later identify as his greatest foes. However, it's even worse that he ended up placing so much faith in 2 random Dark Jedi that almost nobody has ever heard of before. I personally like Baylan Skoll. I thought he was probably one of the real highlights of the show, like as a character, whatever. And we hadn't really seen a whole lot of Dark Jedi, especially live action or whatever. So I thought that was pretty cool. Shin Hati, she is a Force-sensitive Dark Jedi Padawan that should know the Force and how to use a lightsaber, and got defeated by Sabine, who couldn't do any of that stuff. So that character is basically a lost cause. Once you get defeated so easily by somebody that has no skill whatsoever. It makes you look like a complete incompetent loser. I don't understand why they kept sending Shin out to go fight her, because she'd already lost, and it was like completely obvious that she had no chance of defeating her, even with the Force by her side, the dark side of the Force. But the Baylan Skoll thing, yeah, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. It's like, you guys go hunt them down, and that's the plan. These guys are mercenaries or whatever. Why are you depending on them when you have an entire army at your disposal right now? You have military vehicles, you have surveillance equipment. Why aren't you using the full force of your actual capabilities if you really want to see Sabine find Ezra Bridger and put them both out? Then you send Baylan Skoll and Shin in after the fact, once you actually know where they are. And hell, you probably don't even need to, because Sabine really had no force powers, and Ezra Bridger is still a Padawan. He's not fully trained. They could probably be taken down by an entire squad of stormtroopers at that point. So yeah, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. You know, I had less problems with that particular part of the story. I understood they wanted to give Baylan Skoll and Shin a reason to get stuck on the planet or whatever. And then Baylan goes on a side quest. I don't even know what that was about, to be completely honest. So I don't know. The Thrawn stuff was just an enormous disappointment. They did make him look like an absolute jabroni over and over and over again. None of his plans really made any sense. He had no contingencies that really made any sense. He was only there to facilitate Sabine finding Ezra with her lightsaber, freeing him and getting him back to the ship with Thrawn not being able to stop him. That's how stupid he was. And you know, I thought Thrawn deserved a whole lot better than that. I think a lot of people probably thought Thrawn deserved a whole lot better than that. And I understand for maybe a younger generation of Star Wars fans, Ahsoka and Ezra maybe were the main event, maybe Sabine or whatever, because of Rebels. But for a lot of longtime Star Wars fans, the main event of this show was finally seeing Thrawn live action. And like most of the things that we've wanted to see for a long time, whether it be a Boba Fett TV show or the return of Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, it kind of just got ruined by Disney Star Wars. And this time it's Dave Filoni doing the dirty deed with this one. And a lot of people like to act like Dave Filoni is the great hope for Star Wars, but he's really not. I mean, he's made the worst Star Wars movie in the history of Star Wars movies. In a Star Wars movie universe that includes The Last Jedi, Ewoks, Caravan of Courage, and whatever the other Ewoks movie was. You know what I mean? Clone Wars is worse than all three of those movies, and all three of those movies are absolutely terrible. Clone Wars is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. So, you know, Dave Filoni's done a lot of things in destroying things that were supposed to be really cool and have people really excited. You know, at this point, I don't want to see Mara Jade enter the Star Wars universe in live action at Disney. You know, I probably don't want to see Kyle Katarn show up. There's a lot of characters. I probably don't want to see Revan show up. I don't want to see Darth Bade show up. I don't want to see Darth Plagueis and the origin of Sidious and all that kind of stuff that, you know, I've been consuming for a really long time and been a big fan of, because I know Disney will do nothing but destroy it and ruin it at the end, because they just can't help themselves. They are not Star Wars fans, I think, in a lot of cases like we are. You would think that Dave Filoni would be the biggest Star Wars fan. He's the biggest fan of the stuff he created. He's the biggest fan of Ahsoka. He's the biggest fan of Sabine. He's the biggest fan of Ezra. He's the biggest fan of Chopper. He's not the biggest fan of Thrawn because he didn't make Thrawn. He's not the biggest fan maybe of a Boba Fett because he didn't make Boba Fett. It definitely feels like Dave Filoni has fallen in love with his own creations and decided to spite other things out there that are certainly more intriguing and have way bigger implications and money-making opportunities than the characters that he personally has created. And I think it's definitely doing a disservice to Star Wars in general. And, you know, I think I'm just waiting with bated breath for Disney to cut bait and sell Lucasfilm back to George Lucas or anybody at this point. Or hell, maybe when Apple buy Disney, they'll care more about Star Wars than actual the Lucasfilm that we have now, led by Kathleen Kennedy. So those are my thoughts. This all kind of spins out of actually watching Ahsoka, which I never planned to do, but my so-called friend, we'll call him friend in quotes here, Aaron Sparrow, sat down and watched, I think, the first 6 or 7 episodes, and we decided to finish it off and do a review. And I talked about it with him. Big disappointment all around. We didn't give Thrawn as much criticism as he's deserved, but we definitely hit a lot of stuff in this one. There's also a link in the video description.